Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to another story from the Awesome Possum Classroom. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to read an American tall tale called Pecos Bill. Pecos Bill was a legendary cowboy who was raised by coyotes and had adventures with his beloved horse, Widowmaker. Here's the definition of a tall tale. Tall tales are often told as if the narrator was part of the story, and the tone is usually light and playful. There are three key characteristics of a tall tale. First, the main character is larger than life and has incredible abilities and uses strength and smarts to accomplish great things. Second, the main character is helped out by either an object or an animal. And finally, tall tales use regular language and seemingly the characters are common, everyday people. Tall tales and legends are similar, but tall tales are so exaggerated that they simply cannot be true. Legends, on the other hand, have some element of historical fact or accuracy. Tall tales are believed to have originated in the 1800s when frontiersmen in the United States would gather around the fire and tell stories bragging about the adventures they have had. At the time, explorers were traveling to the Wild West and had many stories to tell about it. The name Tall Tale is said to come from the fact that the heroes in the story are larger than life, as is the story itself, even if the tall tale is based on a real person. Let's go ahead and start reading the story of Pecos Bill. Way back in the days when the West was wild, the bravest, toughest baby north of the Rio Grande was born to pioneer parents. Now, this baby's name was William, but everyone called him Baby Bill. Even in the cradle, everyone knew Baby Bill would grow up to be something special. Why, when he was barely toddling, Baby Bill would have played rattles with rattlesnakes and toy soldiers with scorpions if his ma would have let him. When he started to crawl, he'd sneak out of the cabin and wander off to wrestle baby bear cubs. One day, Baby Bill started crying and fussing, something terrible. His mom tried everything, but nothing she did calmed him. Finally, Bill's oldest brother, Bobby, figured it out. Another family had moved in 50 miles away, and Baby Bill was feeling crowded. Ma and Pop agreed with Baby Bill, so they packed up the family in a covered wagon and headed west towards the sunset. Not long into their journey, the family had to ford the wide, wild Pecos River. The wagon jammed against a rock, and Baby Bill popped out of the back before anyone noticed. Luckily, Baby Bill taught himself how to swim quick. But the family traveled on and didn't notice he was missing until it was too late. It was from that tricky river that Baby Bill got his new nickname, Pecos Bill. So Pecos Bill crawled out of the river and took off crawling through Texas sand. He might have crawled clear back to the old cabin, but he crawled smack dab into a coyote. Now this coyote was a mama coyote. She looked at the dirty, naked, pink thing crawling at her and wondered if her cubs would like it for supper. But then Pecos Bill sat up and started scratching her behind her ears. "Nice doggy," he said. The mama coyote's heart melted a little. The pink thing was kind of cute after all. She took him home to her den, but instead of eating him for supper, she decided to raise him with her coyote cubs. So Pecos Bill spent the next 17 years running with the coyote. When they howled at the moon, he howled around with them. When they hunted, he chased prey clear across the prairie with them. He learned how to read scents on the wind and how to stay so still he turned invisible. It was a fine, hot day in the middle of summer, and Pecos Bill was playing tag with some prairie dogs when he saw an unfamiliar sight. A tall creature was coming towards him through the tall grass. Pecos Bill couldn't tell if it had 4 legs or 6. It had been so long since he'd seen a man on a horse he'd forgotten what one looked like. The cowboy hauled back on the reins and stopped short when he saw Pecos Bill. He was dirty and sunburned and naked as the day he was born. But the cowboy squinted at Pecos Bill and started crying and carrying on with joy. You see, the cowboy was Bob, Bill's oldest brother, and he recognized Pecos Bill. Bill had grown to look mighty like their mother. She had died of grief 17 years earlier from losing her baby boy. However, Pecos Bill needed more convincing that he'd met his long-lost brother. Problem was, Pecos Bill thought he was a coyote. He just looked at his brother and howled. "If you're a coyote, where's your tail?" argued Bob. Pecos Bill looked over his shoulder and started turning in circles, trying to see his tail. At last he said, "Well, I'm beat. Guess I'm a man after all." So Bill followed Bob back to the ranch where Bob said he'd make him the best cowboy Texas had ever seen. At first, though, Pecos Bill thought it was hard being a man. For one thing, clothes are mighty scratchy if you aren't used to wearing them. And using a knife, a fork, and a spoon instead of your hands takes some getting used to. But one thing Pecos Bill did take to right away was horses. It could be they smelled the coyote in him and respected him for it. Or maybe they knew he was wilder than them. Whatever it was, there wasn't a horse in the West that Pecos Bill couldn't tame. Pecos Bill was on his way to town to buy himself a horse when he passed a herd of wild mustangs. The other cowboys yelled that the mustangs were too wild and they'd kick his head in. But Pecos Bill ran up to the wildest horse in the herd and hopped aboard bareback. And whoo-wee did that horse kick and buck up a storm. He bucked so hard he turned somersaults, but Bill stuck on his back like a burr. Finally exhausted, the horse gave up. He looked over his shoulder at Pecos Bill and gave him a friendly nip on the knee. But Bill knew from that moment they'd be best of friends. He called his new friend Widowmaker 'cause no other cowboy could ride him. Pecos Bill was the best cowboy in Texas, and he taught the other cowboys some better ways of doing things. He taught them to tie a loop at the end of a rope and use it to lasso down cows. He taught them to ride herds and keep the cows together in a group. He even taught them to sing cowboy songs around the campfire at night, singing at the moon like he had done as a coyote. One summer, Texas was in the middle of the worst drought anyone could remember. The Pecos River ran almost dry, and even the cacti shriveled up and blew away. There was no water for the cows and horses. But Pecos Bill knew just what to do. Up in Oklahoma, a huge tornado, black and mighty, was twisting away on the prairie and keeping the rain clouds with it. Pecos Bill galloped Widowmaker up to Oklahoma and found that twister. Pecos Bill took his rope, the longest in Texas, tossed it in the air, and lassoed the twister right out of the sky. He jumped on top and rode that twister all the way back to Texas, jabbing it with his spurs to make it rain as he went. So the drought ended in Texas, and Pecos Bill invented the rodeo. Though today, most cowboys ride horses and bulls in a rodeo, not tornadoes. Well, that's the end of our story today, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back another day. Bye-bye.